Hello, everybody. This is Aaron Walther, and with me is my buddy Luke Thompson-Moritz, and we are the two geniuses behind this podcast.
Correct.
Comic DNA. Haha. This is our second episode. I hope everybody enjoyed our first episode. As of the recording of this one, we haven't put it up yet, so we have no idea what the reactions to the first episode are, but we're going to keep talking about comics anyway because that's just what we do. So, for the second episode, I was pretty excited to do this book. We are going to be talking about Miracleman, Book 1. Miracleman is a longtime favorite of mine. It was one of the first books that I found when I started researching into the history of comics and notable important works. And Miracleman is one that kept coming up and was constantly recommended to me. And it was also the hardest one to find because it has been out of print for so long. Incidentally, this episode is probably going to be one of the most current books that we review.
With a few exceptions here and there.
With a few exceptions here and there. We're not going out of our way to only do old comics or anything, but we're just talking about comics that we love. And it just, as it happens, Miracleman is a comic that we love. And recently, Marvel Comics has acquired the rights to publish Miracleman. And that, in and of itself, is a whole big mess of a long story, which I can't even begin to give you all of the details. But I'll give you a basic rundown for those few of you who are interested in comics that don't already know, because I'm sure most of you have already heard about this. But there's a reason we did Shazam for our first episode, aside from the fact that it's an excellent book, and Luke and I are both big fans of Jeff Smith. It also kind of allows us to segue into Miracleman and how interesting Miracleman is. Miracleman, as a comic, basically came about when a British publisher who had the rights to publish Captain Marvel suddenly lost Captain Marvel. As if you'll recall, in the last episode, we talked briefly about the history of Captain Marvel, and due to a decades-long lawsuit with DC, Fawcett Comics eventually decided to stop publishing Captain Marvel. And as a result, you had this British publisher, L. Miller and Son, who were publishing. They had the British rights to publish Captain Marvel in the UK. Well, as a result, they suddenly lost their lucrative comic that they were publishing. So they went to a comic book artist by the name of Mick Anglo and basically just said, "Give us a British Captain Marvel." And what he came up with was a character called Marvelman, which is a pretty blatant copy of Captain Marvel. I mean, I don't want to sound like it's like I'm disparaging him or anything. That was his job. Like, they said, we lost Captain Marvel, but our fans want Captain Marvel, so we got to give them some kind of Captain Marvel. And that's what he came up with. He came up with Marvelman, which was basically Captain Marvel in every way, except instead of a red costume, he was a blue costume. And,
clever.
Yeah, and he had a kid, young Captain Marvel. He had a little sidekick, the whole Marvel family. But it was all Marvelman. Everything was young Marvelman, kid Marvelman. And they basically did that for, I think, another decade until 1963, and then it eventually was canceled. And in the 80s, the character was revived. And that was one of Alan Moore's first long-form comic books that he did.
This was pre-Watchmen, correct?
Yes. Oh, this was pre-Watchmen. This was it was revived in 1982. It was originally published by it was Warrior Magazine, I believe. And eventually it was published by Eclipse Comics in the USA. But the Marvelman, which Alan Moore's Marvelman, when it eventually was published in the USA, the name was changed to Miracleman, not because Marvel Comics had specifically said anything to them, but I think they just knew. They hedged their bets and just said, if we're going to get into the USA market, we better just avoid any sort of confrontation with Marvel Comics. So they changed the name to Miracleman. And I don't blame them, actually. I think the name Miracleman is better. Marvelman is good, but Miracleman is special. So, Alan Moore's series, Miracleman, which we will be referring to it as Miracleman, obviously, for the rest of this podcast. But Miracleman is really noteworthy because it was, by and large, the first really postmodern deconstruction of superhero comics. I know Alan Moore obviously went on to become really famous for
multiple
work,
comics.
Yeah, for lots of things. He's V for Vendetta, his run on Swamp Thing, Watchmen, of course, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The list is endless, but Watchmen is the go-to deconstructionist comic. And while Watchmen is a true masterpiece, I do think Watchmen is a perfect comic story.
Most people would agree.
I don't think it's as thorough of a deconstruction of the superhero genre as Miracleman is, and I think that's what makes Miracleman really special. The other thing that makes Miracleman really special is that it has been out of print for so long, due to the most ridiculous ongoing legal battles between Todd McFarlane and Neil Gaiman and a host of other bunch of other people. But basically, I can't even, like I said, I can't even get into the details. But basically, after Alan Moore's run ended, Neil Gaiman took over, and then at some point, nobody could decide on who actually owned the rights to Marvelman. Todd McFarlane had purchased all of Eclipse creative assets, which included, or was supposed to include, Miracleman. But then Neil Gaiman was making a claim of co-ownership, and there was all this nonsense, and this lawsuit battle went on for decades. And it wasn't until very recently, within the last couple of years, that it was all finally resolved, and Marvel Comics came in and just bought everything. They cleared the decks. They bought everybody out.
As usual.
Yeah, and they have 100% sole rights to Marvelman and Miracleman. And the good thing about this is that the book is finally being republished. So Marvel Comics is actually in the process right now of reprinting all of Alan Moore's original Miracleman run, which I have not read. And I should be clear that for the purposes of our review, we are actually going to be reading the old Eclipse books, the colored versions from the 80s. I'm sure some people would prefer us to talk about the new coloring in the new books, and I don't have anything to say about that because I haven't read them yet.
This is what we had on hand.
Yeah, this is what we have. Now, I haven't bought any of the new issues yet. When Marvel puts out a very nice hardcover of all the original issues, I will buy that, and I would love to read it and talk about the new colors. Maybe we'll do that in the future if and when we do a podcast for the next books. But for right now, we are just going to review, quote, Book 1 of Miracleman, which consists of the first 3 issues of the original Eclipse run. So, with all of that said, I think that kind of covers everything for the character, at least his production history. So basically, in 1982, Alan Moore got the job to revive Miracleman, and he wanted to do this very postmodern, dark, deconstructionist version of it. And the first 2 issues were done by artist Gary Leach. I am not very familiar with Gary Leach's work outside of Miracleman. He's a UK artist, so I really can't talk much about Gary Leach other than these 2 issues of Miracleman that he did, issues 1 and 2, which are absolutely gorgeous.
I completely agree.
Say that. They are just beautiful. Miracleman, Book 1, written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Gary Leach. Luke, you had not really heard much about this book.
Virtually nothing.
I kind of insisted that we do it, especially knowing that you really enjoyed Captain Marvel.
You've talked about it countless times. Yes. I'm a big Alan Moore fan, so I was interested. I wanted to see what the deal was.
So, as somebody who knew absolutely nothing about the series other than the few little things I've told you about how groundbreaking and important and cool it is, what were your first impressions of it overall? Like, what were you expecting, and then what did you think about what you got?
Well, going into it, I was very not sure what to expect, and it's Alan Moore. Anything could kind of happen. It could be sort of the serious tone of Watchmen. It could be, it could have been anything. So going into this, because I knew about the similarities between Miracleman and Captain Marvel, I expected a Captain Marvel story in a way, but with Alan Moore's twist on it. So in theory, that's kind of what I got, but it also substantially exceeded my expectations. I loved how how the story starts, and it feels just like a comic from that era. Like, it just feels like we need to save the day, and just all these other superhero tropes, I guess, that have developed over the years. It felt like a big culmination of those. And me, not knowing anything about the original source material, I was very, very not sure. I go into this and I'm thinking, what is he having me read? And then, as we will talk about through the continuation of the review, it just throws it out of left field. It completely disregards everything. And that just feels Alan Moore to me. That he just, not necessarily poking fun at the original source material, but making it known that this is not what you are used to. And you said this was his first long-running comic, right?
It was one of his first.
He
had some comic work, I think, before this, but this was definitely his. I think it was definitely his first big notable work.
Okay, sure. And you can see you can see the birth of a lot of Alan Moore styled things in this. Comparing it to some of his later works, and whenever it started getting into what you would expect from an Alan Moore comic, you already start to feel at home. Because when I first started this, it felt, I want to say uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a way of it's not what I expected at all in the beginning. And as it progresses, it really gets you. So
yeah, it definitely ropes you in. What I love, I guess we'll just get into it here. We're just gonna break it down by issues and kind of talk about the story
as a whole,
as it goes along.
As a whole, it started off very uncomfortably for me because I'm not used to that era of superhero comics.
Right.
And then as it starts to get into the Alan Moore style, I start to get a lot more, I start to get a lot more acclimated to the characters and to the Alan Moore style of things. I'm going to say that so much during this. The Alan Moore style.
Well, and that's an important thing to kind of recognize. I do think that Miracleman as a comic, I am actually really interested to hear what a lot of modern day comic fans think of Miracleman. I have to confess, I have my finger very far from the pulse of the community, so I have no idea if people are digging it or not. But
you mean the current run of Miracleman?
Yes, the reprints of it.
Yeah.
Because there's such a large segment of the fandom that's never read it because it's been out of print for so long.
Right.
And Miracleman, like you're saying, you keep saying the Alan Moore style. And what's interesting about Miracleman is that it kind of has what I would call Citizen Kane syndrome, where because it was the first to do a lot of the things that it does, it did so many things for the first time in this book that nearly every comic book on the stands made after it was copying it, or not
trying
copying
to do
it, not necessarily copying it, but just inspired by it. And they realized that this is new, and this is really
exciting.
good. So yeah, this is new and exciting, and we want our comics to be like that too. So a lot of people started adapting this Alan Moore style into their comics, and obviously, you know, historically, if we look back, we can see that that is exactly what happened throughout the 80s and into the 90s. The shadow of Alan Moore looms large. Like, you just cannot get away from his influence, whether people realize it or not.
Regardless of how subtle or how dominant the influence is, it's there.
And I think Miracleman, in a way, kind of suffers from that, because if you read Miracleman now, outside of historical context, like if you've read a lot of books by J. Michael Straczynski and even like Frank Miller, who was obviously doing a lot of his stuff at the time as Alan Moore, but you read a lot of modern comic book writers, and then you read Miracleman, and it just kind of feels like same old, but you got to understand that Alan Moore was doing this 10 years before everybody decided it was a really good idea to start doing it. So like Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, a lot of people watch Citizen Kane and they don't really get what the big deal is, but you watch Citizen Kane and you understand that Orson Welles invented a lot of the stuff in that movie that has now become just standard practice across all cinema. And that's what makes Citizen Kane so important, and I think that's what makes Miracleman so important.
Is it set such a precedent for following comics?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And until Miracleman, Alan Moore's Miracleman specifically, was there many comics trying to do the deconstruction of the genre, or was this one of the big ones that started it?
I mean, I don't have a absolute knowledge of the comic book industry, but I'm pretty comfortable saying that Miracleman is the book that got the ball rolling.
Okay.
I'm sure there obviously have been some comic book artists and writers who had kind of broached the subject of deconstructing.
Right.
You know, I mean, like, you make jokes. There are jokes in comics all the time, kind of about playing on the like expected tropes. Like,
yeah,
that happens. God dang it! There's somebody specifically that I was thinking of, and his name totally escaped me, and I'm going to remember it as soon as we're done recording.
Of course.
Like somebody like Steve Gerber, with his Howard the Duck run, which is something that not a lot of people have read. But, Steve Gerber was a pretty good satirist, and so he would do... He kind of, he had a deconstructionist style. Like in a
different vein.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Still.
He would make jokes about the genre and tropes.
Right.
But Miracleman really was the first book to take a superhero and completely pull apart
make him not super in
exactly. Well, yeah. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but it really was like the first book to so perfectly capture the idea of a superhero in the quote real world.
He felt like human and relatable still.
It's not even that, but it's so starkly not fiction.
Right.
Like, this is a comic book character who's been thrust into reality. And that's really kind of what the postmodern deconstruction of Miracleman, that's the style that Alan Moore worked in. And I think he did it really well. And he did it, and it was so successful, obviously, that people have been doing it for decades. They're still doing it. People are still doing it. Chapter 1 of Book 1, as you said, Luke, really kind of threw you off, because it is in my opinion, it is a perfect pastiche of a 1950s era superhero comic. And this is in my opinion, it's like the perfect opening to a deconstruction of a superhero, because he gives you a very straight, unapologetic, this is how it is kind of a story. It's the characters are all set in a style of the 50s. It's a weird, wacky kind of a plot. The villain is a time traveler from the future, and he's going to take over the past so that he can control the future. And Gary Leach, his art style, he perfectly mimics Mick Anglo's style, so that it looks like a comic from the 50s. Like you said, you were fooled. You didn't.
Oh, I was. He pulled the wool over my eyes.
Yeah, you didn't understand what you were reading. until you kind of get into it and you realize that there's something going on here.
Right.
Because like what I love about chapter 1 is it starts off, like I said, it starts off as this perfect pastiche, and then you kind of realize Alan Moore sets up the deconstruction so perfectly, because what you have, the villain is a time traveler from the 80s. And what this villain is doing, he's from the 80s, and he's invading the 50s in order to conquer it and rule it. And now this is a direct setup. This is like foreshadowing of exactly thematically what is going to be happening throughout the remainder of the series.
Which is incredibly clever.
Yeah, you have two comic book artists, Alan Moore and Gary Leach, from the 80s, who are going back and they're mining material from the 50s, and they're going to change it and adapt it for the future. And that is literally what the villain's plan was. He's from the 80s, he's going to go back in time to the 50s, and he's going to change everything so that he can be controlling the future. That's really clever, and the subtext of that kind of story is that mining old material, it's very aggressive, and it's something that the past is very resistant to. It's not what they want. They want to be left alone, which I think a lot of readers can look at that, and a lot of fans can look at that and say, you know, I want my stuff to be pure, and it doesn't need to be always updated and changed for whatever current fad is going on. So I thought it was really interesting how, in a way, Alan Moore kind of painted himself and Gary Leach as the villains of the book in the first chapter.
Right. They're mining the old material, like you were saying. Yeah.
I also thought it was really funny once you kind of like start figuring out what's going on. Like when Miracleman travels to the future of the 1980s, and they have like the 1980s science cops, and they're all dressed in like 1980s fashion, but it's all like weird misunderstood fashion. Like they're wearing like headbands and polos, and it is 80s fashion, but it's not what a cop in the 80s would be wearing.
Exactly.
So it was like a really good kind of a nod to how like we never actually can predict like what the future is going to look like. We have ideas. I think is clever, or which I think is hilarious actually.
Mm-hmm. Throughout these first couple pages, when he goes to the future, seeing what the artist believed the 80s were going to look like is funny.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good.
How much the artist thought we were going to advance in 20 years was hilarious.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's something that's always going on. It's like science fiction is always predicting in 20 years so much is going to change, and in reality so much does change, but it's never exactly what we think.
Right.
So they did that really well. Like this perfect setup. They give you a very straight Miracleman story. The heroes win, they punch the bad guys, the day is saved, and that's it. And then it ends with them smiling and winking at the camera. And then the very last page, like, completely pulls the rug out from under you and lets you know what you are going to be seeing. When it just prints that Nietzsche quote. And each panel successively just keeps zooming in on Miracleman's eye until you have just this all black panel with the finish of that Nietzsche quote. That's where you're like, that's where the realization sets in, when you're like, oh, this is different. Something is happening here.
Another thing that I think is worth noting too is throughout the beginning of these first pages, they really put Miracleman and the Miracleman family on a pedestal. Like they really make them seem invincible. So throughout the deconstruction of the character, it really shows you how far he really fell, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really clever because, like I said, it threw me off. And the beginning pages, I had no idea what to expect. I felt like it already kind of like came full circle by the time the quote happened, what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. And I just was, all I could think of was, how are they going to continue this? And then I went, oh, it's Alan Moore. It's going to continue. So it's going to continue in typical Alan Moore fashion. And I just thought that was great, that they set him up to seem truly, truly invincible in the beginning pages of the story.
Well, which was, of course, an accurate pastiche of the old comics. I mean, as we discussed with Captain Marvel, a lot of times in the Captain Marvel books, what he would do is there'd be some bad guys, and he would say Shazam, turn into Captain Marvel, and then stand there while they tried to kill him, and then laugh because they couldn't do it because he's Captain Marvel.
Right, he's invincible.
Right, he's invincible. That was how superheroes were treated. They were just... There was no villain that could compete with them. They were just pinnacles of invincibility. And so with Miracleman, it really tears apart that whole concept. But at the same time, still giving us a character who is a god among men as a hero.
Right.
So after the first chapter, we get through the whole pastiche, and that's when the story really starts with chapter 2. We're thrust into the present day of the main character, Mike Moran, and he's having all his dreams and his nightmares about being Captain Marvel. So
being Miracleman.
Or Captain Marvel. Yeah, I'm probably going to do that a couple of times.
It's okay.
But yeah, being Miracleman. So kind of once you realize like what was going on, what did you think of like the rest of the issue as it got going?
The rest of the issue, like I was saying earlier, it starts getting into the Alan Moore stylization of things. It seems really organic and like, the second the plot twist happens and it says, he was having the dream again, so on and so forth, it roped me in almost instantaneously, because as soon as I hit the page 11 with the Nietzsche quote,
yes,
that was when I was thinking, what are you having me read? Is it going to continue like this? Oh my goodness! And then the plot twist happens, and I audibly went, oh my god, and I went, there's no way this really is happening. So it continues on, and I'm in shock, I'm in awe, and all I can think about as it starts revealing that he's having these dreams again, and that he can't remember the word to transform, all I can think about is, I want this to happen so bad. It builds up the tension so bad, especially when he is, I believe, is it at a train station? He's at a train station, and the colors start fading out as his head is starting to pound and whatnot, and the gunmen come up.
They're at the nuclear power plant.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. And I thought it was funny too. I love the kid holding the sign that said "Just out, absorbing some radiation."
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
I loved the imagery on those 2 pages where his head was starting to pound and all the colors are fading out, and just to compliment the artist again. I love the first panel where he transforms, and I thought it was interesting that with this transformation that the criminals were actually affected by it. Just showing how truly powerful this is, that it's like a atomic bomb
that
going
actually
off.
Was like the first, like that's an interesting thing to note, because that's like one of the first little red flags of Alan Moore's deconstruction of the superheroes, where you have in Captain Marvel, he says Shazam, a lightning bolt shoots out of the sky and turns him into Captain Marvel, and that's it. He just transforms. It doesn't affect the world around him. He says Shazam inside of a building, and somehow the lightning bolt hits him in the middle of the building without destroying the building or anything like that. So with Miracleman, Alan Moore addresses that. When Mike Moran says his magic word, Kamota, there's like an atomic explosion, and the people that are standing in front of him are blinded by it. And it affects the room. And
one person gets severely injured, which ends up coming back in a later issue.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love that.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, it's not just like an attention to detail, but it's Alan Moore looking at this is like, he's looking at comic books and saying this is all fantasy. It wouldn't work like this in the real world. And he's trying to give you an accurate real world representation of it. And a real world representation of it is if somebody transforms
with an explosion that big.
Yeah, through atomic power into a Superman, it affects the world around you. And in this case, it was like a little bomb going off, and it blinds the guys in front of him, and there's smoke and there's ash everywhere. It's powerful. Like, it just radiates power. It's raw power. So yeah, that's a good thing to notice, because there's a lot of little things like that throughout the series, but I think that was the first one, really.
The first one that really stuck out to me, at the very least. There might have been other things that were subtle, but I mean, we're only a few pages in, so I loved how terrified the guys were after this happened, because in other instances, the criminals would just be like, "Oh my God, what happened? Get back!"
Yeah.
And these guys are just like, "What just happened? You just exploded. Like, what's going on?" And I also loved the line, "You're pigs, and pigs get barbecued."
Yeah.
That's funny.
Again, it's a superhero in the real world. Like, they don't know what they're looking at.
Right, they have no idea what's happening. This guy they're staring at a god in front of them. And it's just, like you were saying, further showing Alan Moore deconstructing what's happening. And like I was saying, most of the time people would just see it and go, "Oh my God, that's it." That's pretty much it. They don't actually react to it. They don't have an emotional change seeing this. And I just, you can tell that Miracleman is glad to be out again throughout these next couple pages. He just is so happy that he's back out, that it's been so long that he's been stuck, I guess you could say. And I also, as it continues, I love his wife, I believe, or fiance, Liz. I love how just further enhancing the idea that superhero in the real world, people don't know how to react to this. I wouldn't know how to react to this if this happened in front of me. And then the Miracle Dog joke killed me.
Yeah.
Oh man, what was next? Miracle Dog? Liz, this is serious.
I was gonna say, I really liked how Liz reacted to Miracleman when he shows up. They did a really good job of treating Mike and Miracleman as two people who are one person. Which
is really, I feel, unique, especially for when it was written.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that is kind of what Captain Marvel was presented as. It's definitely what Thor was presented as in his first appearances by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So it's a superhero trope that has been around, but Alan Moore did it really well. But I did really like how Liz, Mike's wife, did not recognize him.
That was a nice touch, also.
And he had to basically tell her, like, look closer. And then, like, once he kind of said it, then she got it, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're Mike." That was done really well. How he's not a human being. Like, he's something more than a human being. And so she wouldn't even recognize him as her own husband, even though they do basically look the same. The way Gary Leach draws them, he used the actor Paul Newman as the model for both Mike and Miracleman, except Miracleman is drawn as like a perfect being, a perfect, handsome Paul Newman. And Mike is like a schlubby, middle-aged, chubby Paul Newman.
Right.
So they look the same, but they look completely different. And that was done very well.
I also think it's worth noting, too, that when he is Miracleman, he's toned. Like, he's not super bodybuilder bulky, like Superman, like gigantic, barrel-chested. I think he's fit. Like, he's human, but not human. Also, at the same time,
he's more than human.
I also loved in this chapter when it introduces, it's Kid Miracle, I believe, and he says, it doesn't reveal that it's him yet, but it's when it reveals the mystery man. He says, "Miracleman, he's back to spoil everything," and slams the TV, and his desk is lit on fire. It's kind of foreshadowing that it's kind of hinting that something's coming, I guess, or something is not happy that Miracleman is back.
Right.
And I loved the couple pages right after Liz and him talk about him being Miracleman, showing all of the recollecting all of the events previously from Miracleman, the little villains, like this little
talking about all the
rogues
adventures
gallery.
he's had.
Right. I thought that was a nice touch.
Well, and it was also it's interesting, and obviously it becomes a plot point at some point, but how Miracleman is remembering all these adventures and all these villains he's fought, and Liz is sitting there saying, like, that never happened. We would remember that. Like, we would
remember a god.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we would remember about people, trying to take over the world, but that never happened. And that was also a good little, like, a deconstruction, a separation of the fiction world and reality, where Miracleman is trying to explain. He's like, I've got all these powers, and we fought all these bad guys over and over again. And he says something that is very specific, where he says, it sounds silly in 1982, but in the 50s it made perfect sense.
Right.
Again, that's
deconstructing.
Like, the deconstruction of back in the 50s it was just little kids fiction, but now in the 80s it's real. This is
really happening.
This is really happening. Yeah.
I also, I loved the, what was it? Young Nasty Man.
yeah, villain, young nasty man.
I can't help that. That's just so.
Well, that was the real villain in the old Marvel Man comics. Young nasty man. Yeah.
Oh, I'm assuming same powers as Miracleman.
Yeah,
okay.
Basically he was the bad Marvel Man, bad Miracleman.
So as this page continues, it starts revealing, the whole atom bomb situation, which continues to be a plot point throughout the story. And I loved the the last panel of the page was just the gigantic explosion. Just artistically, it's so simple, but it with their silhouettes being right in the center of it, it's like that little nice attention to detail to show that this was a gigantic bomb. Because how are you going to take these guys out otherwise? It had to be pull out all the stops, throw everything we had at them.
Yeah, the use of the A-bomb is really, really interesting because obviously it is tied to Miracleman's origin. Like, it is, his magic word is Kimota, which is atomic backwards. He was granted his powers by a super scientist from the future who gave him atomic powers. Like, all of his superpowers are tied to atomic energy, which is pretty unique, actually, for a character that was born out of the 50s into the 60s, because a lot of characters really weren't playing the atomic power angle. That actually is not something that came into play until Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Marvel Comics. And what's interesting about that is Stan Lee used the atomic bomb for nearly everything. The Hulk was created by the gamma bomb. Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider. Even the X-Men, it was implied that it was
genetic mutation sort of thing.
It was implied that the mutations were affected because of atomic fallout.
Okay.
Because of all this rampant use of atomic energy and the atomic bombs going off all over the place, that was triggering these mutations. So the atomic bomb was heavy in all of the early Marvel stuff, which didn't come until basically the same time that Marvel Man, the original Marvel Man series, was canceled. So it is kind of interesting how you can look at that, how the atomic bomb really did kill Marvel Man, the publication, because when Marvel Comics kind of exploded. Like, when they became huge. Like, they suddenly, like, overnight, you had these books, Avengers, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four. They were all competing with DC's established world-famous characters, Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, Flash, and et cetera, et cetera. And so Marvel, through the atomic bomb, by making all of their characters relevant, tying in the atomic age,
the current happenings of the world. Yeah,
they kind of killed the old style of superhero, which was the Captain Marvel style superhero. So it is kind of interesting how you can look at that and say, Marvel Man was killed by an atomic bomb, or he was killed by atomic energy. But at the same time, it's really weird because atomic energy was tied to his origin. So he can't escape the A-bomb. So it obviously makes perfect sense that in a Miracleman book where you're talking about Miracleman's origin, of course he's going to be killed, quote unquote, by an atomic bomb.
Poetic irony.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So now we're getting into chapter 4, which I wholeheartedly believe is my favorite chapter of this issue.
Yes.
The foreshadowing in this issue this chapter of this issue is absolutely mind-melting. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about what was going to be coming in the previous issues. I had chills at the end of this issue just because how well they established the villain, quote unquote, the villain.
Yes.
I love on the first page of chapter 4. I love how they put the text in the gutters. Just a little nice artistic detail. I really like that. And I also very much like the quote, it has been a long time since Liz Moran was surprised by who she woke up next to. That was a nice little, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I got a chuckle out of it. It finally begins to introduce Kid Miracle again, which it's been in the back of my head since the beginning of the story. He didn't die from the bomb. What happened to the other two? It was always in the back of the head, in my back of my head throughout reading this story. All I can think of is they had to have survived as well.
Right. If Miracleman survived.
Yeah, I mean, they were. It kept noting that like they were basically as powerful as Miracleman to a degree. So it set that up very nicely. And when it first introduces John, he already looks very mischievous, very not evil, but like very conniving.
And Giant Bates just has that like bad guy style, a real angular face, sharp features, sharp nose, short black hair with a widow's peak. I mean,
the widow's peak is a nice touch.
The widow's peak. I mean, that when you look at the art, you look at the original Johnny Bates, and you look at how Gary Leach presents him, it seems very natural. Like it just seems
a natural
like
progression.
It just seems like this is what this kid would have grown up to look like. But it kind of gives you chills looking at him because you're like, that looks like a bad guy.
It really, really does. And it's just like the first thing that I thought of when I saw him was Sinestro. Like he just had this Sinestro look to him, and not even like 2 seconds later, I went, I bet he's the villain. Yes. I bet he is the villain. I can't believe it. They're introducing him so early. This is amazing. So, the scene where Johnny and Mike are talking out on the balcony, that's what specifically gave me chills.
I really liked that, how, like, they have their little meeting, and Liz and Mike are there meeting with John, and they're kind of reminiscing, and John kind of gives him his story about, what happened. He survived, and he got on with his life, and whatever.
It showed that it took a toll on him.
Yeah, though. Yeah. And then Liz leaves, and I really liked how Mike immediately saw through the lie. Like, he immediately knew it, yeah. And all the narration, like the poetry about the tiger's eyes, and how...
Oh, that was stellar.
Yeah, like, and that works really well, because, that is kind of how it is. Like, when you meet people, like, you look into somebody's eyes, and you can just get a feeling from them. And that's definitely what was going on here, but at the same time, Mike, now that he's become Miracleman, he's tapping into this, higher consciousness, and he could just tell. He
saw right through it.
Yeah, he saw right through it. Looked into Johnny's eyes, and he could see they were tiger's eyes.
He could tell that there was something that he was hiding from him, and I love that before reading the next issues and finding out what happens. I love that it just felt like they didn't waste any time introducing Miracleman's goal was
they just
take this
jumped right
down.
into it.
And I thought that was so great because it showed it in the first couple pages with the classic Miracleman thing. That they didn't waste any time establishing characters. They didn't waste any time explaining anything. They threw you right in. And even though this book had to re-explain the idea behind Miracleman and the idea behind superheroes in the real world and whatnot, it still feels like it didn't waste any time getting the ball rolling. And it gave Miracleman a present, or like a goal to work towards. It gave the reader a villain to hate. It gave it answered the question, what happened to Kid Miracle? It felt like a full circle, and that it felt satisfying, I guess. And my favorite line. This is almost why I believe that this issue was this chapter was so strong in this issue. The tiger imagery, like you were saying, they see the smile on the face of the tiger. I love that line so stinking much. It just the art on that panel specifically just made him look absolutely mortifying. Like that he was just been waiting for this moment for however many years Miracleman has been out of the picture, I guess. And it just thank you. And it just made him seem truly terrifying. Like the art is just so brilliant on that page, or on that panel specifically. But in general, it's great. But that panel really speaks volumes.
Yeah, I do like how they really just jump into the big superhero fight. And this is, of course, another deconstruction of the superhero genre, because, Mike shows up to talk to Johnny, and Johnny, like, once they figure out, like, oh, he still has his powers, and he just decides he's got to go full villain, as it were, and kill Mike before Mike can make anything worse. And it's just instantaneous. Like, he just starts murdering people. He murders his assistant.
Which comes in the next issue.
Yeah. Well, that's I'm sorry. That's kind of what I'm getting into here.
Oh, sorry. Last bit about the first issue. I forgot to mention it earlier. I just love that the first issue is called Rebirth.
Yes.
I thought that was very clever. That him, bringing life back into Miracleman in his way. Oh, yeah. Okay, so another side note. I absolutely adore the cover on issue 2.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. That cover is so well done and so mysterious. Like, it's just, you see, I'm just going to refer to him as Kid Miracle.
Kid Miracleman.
Kid Miracleman, whatever. I love that they made him seem truly evil on this cover. Like,
no, he's purely diabolical.
And it's about to hit the fan. Like, Miracleman, like I was saying, he has a goal now, and it makes him seem like it's going to be a challenge. Like, it's going to be difficult to take him down. It's not going to be just easy. I also loved, at the start of this issue, they did the whole flat colors thing again through the art, and I loved that. So yeah, here, and then we get into the him killing his assistant, which I didn't even know how to react when that happened, because it was so jarring.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, again, continuing with Alan Moore's deconstruction of the superhero genre, you have Johnny Bates is a true supervillain. I mean, he's just this grotesquely violent baby murderer.
It's been 20 years of this pooling inside of him.
Yeah, and he just, like, he does not view humanity as
equal.
As equal to him as anything that's, like, deserving of life. Like, he kills people the same way that you kill a spider that's crawling across your desk.
He feels like the alpha being.
Yeah, and it's pretty shocking, just in how actually violent he is. Again, this is like the first comic book printed, definitely in America, where the villain is just straight up brutally murdering people. Because for so long, ever since the establishing of the Comics Code Authority, supervillains weren't allowed to murder people. They, according to this self-regulating body, which that's a whole nother story, which I'm not even going to get into, but because the government decided to get involved because they were concerned about the welfare of children who are reading these superhero comics, in order to save itself, the industry decided to put together an independent regulation committee which would monitor all superhero comics, or all comics, and make sure that they adhered to this rigid code of rules. And many of them had to do with how the villains were never allowed to win, crime would never be glorified, murder, you wouldn't see murder, the good guys would always be morally upstanding, and so on and so forth. And that's honestly is like one of the single most influential events to ever happen to the comic book industry throughout all the history of the modern comic book industry. And so part of the thing that made the Miracleman so shocking was that they just completely disregarded that. They threw the whole rules out the window, and that had been going on for many years. A lot of people had been pushing it. But throughout the 70s, there was a lot of, we don't really want to do this, and there's been a lot of compromise. There's a famous Stan Lee story where he tells how somebody contacted him to do a Spider-Man story about the dangers of drugs, and so they did a story where Harry Osborn gets addicted to drugs, and it's all about how drugs are bad. It was literally a PSA. It was literally like...
It's funny, too, that on the same token, they also did a story like that in the Green Arrow story arc with Speedy getting addicted to heroin.
Exactly. Same time period. The 70s, everybody kind of became conscious of... That's when things started changing in the 70s, where people were like, we don't need to adhere to these rules. These rules are stupid. And... like I was saying about Stan Lee's story, he literally was contacted to do this, PSA, this drug awareness story, and the Comics Code Authority wouldn't approve of it because it showed somebody doing drugs, even though it was all about how bad drugs are. But they were like, no, you can't do that. So they put out those issues anyway, and they did not have the Comics Code Authority stamp of approval on them. And once that happened, everybody was like, who really needs the Comics Code
Right, this is
Authority?
kind of baloney.
Yeah, it's baloney, exactly.
So,
hey, I like baloney.
Right? So during this scene of Kid Miracleman killing his assistant, this roped me in again, somehow, further. The text in the gutter, I thought that was a nice attention to detail. I thought it looked good. I loved, said, "For to be human is not enough. When gods cry war amidst the thunder."
Oh, yeah.
Very, very chilling statement. Then it follows up with the introduction of his assistant in the gutter. Yes. Her name is Stephanie. She likes Adam and the ants. Her boyfriend's name is Brian. She collects Wedgwood, and her insides have turned to water.
Yeah.
She's only human.
What?
Oh.
Alan Moore just has to make you... just give you enough
cringe
information to think of her as a real person,
and then it says, "Oh, she's dead."
Yeah, I like Adam and the Ants too. Oh, she's dead.
Right? Oh, I wanted to know about Adam. And I loved the imagery right under that panel of you drop the coffee, he's drilling through her head and melting her.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Like
it's very Alan Moore cringy. Oh, I can't believe you did this. It's insane. And it threw me for a loop. I knew going into this is an Alan Moore book, anything could happen, and it still made me cringe.
Yeah, it's graphic.
It's very graphic. It's a graphic novel. Why don't you?
Yes.
But no, it's very jarring, and it was... I don't want to say refreshing because that sounds weird, but it's refreshing in the sense of it's breaking barriers that I didn't, that I wouldn't have been really consciously aware of. And then I loved how quickly this guy escalated into the villain. He says, just to show you, Mike says, "Jesus Christ, why? She hasn't done anything." The guy, and Kid Miracleman says, "Just to show you that I don't mind doing that sort of thing. In fact, I quite enjoy it." I can just imagine him saying that to me, like
Yeah.
that he's just got this chill to his voice. That's what I'm going to do to your wife.
He is. I mean, yeah. Johnny Bates is like serial killer.
He's been waiting
Scary.
for this for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now that it's finally escalating, like, he's not waiting. He's not doing the typical, I'm going to explain my plan to you while I do it. I'm just going to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Which is great. It's refreshing. It's incredible. And I still love throughout the book, it's always great imagery. The transformation scenes, very, very bright, just a nice touch from an artistic standpoint. So then it gets into the scene with the child, which I thought was phenomenal. Child runs up and says, "It's Superman, he's using his X-ray vision."
Yep.
And Mike says, "Oh my God, no, that child, he's not going to." And it gets you on the edge of your seat. You're thinking, oh my God, is he really going to kill this kid? Is Alan Moore going to kill a kid off in a comic? And I'm just thinking, no, don't do this. So this was such a neat scene for, I can't really think of a better word because it's still terrible that it happened.
Yeah.
I thought it was really nicely done that Miracleman tried to save the child from getting thrown, and he still gets broken ribs.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really nice superheroes aren't perfect in this world parallel to what's going, the deconstruction, just coming back into that theme further on. It was just nice seeing that Miracleman can't do everything.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That was such a yet again refreshing thing. Like, I get so bored of seeing just like, okay, in a lot of modern in a lot of modern depictions of Superman, they either make him invincible or worthless. I feel like there's not a good in between. And seeing him invincible, it's like, okay, let's just call on Superman to punch some stuff. Like, we win. And then seeing him powerless is like, come on, I know you're better than that. Come on.
Yeah.
So this is just, I feel like this is that really good balance of like, he tried to save him, he's fast enough to save him, but it's not without problems.
Yeah, that's a good example of Alan Moore's deconstruction of genre. But that's also the kind of thing that people were not unaware of within the superhero industry. Actually, I would say one of the first famous comic book scenes to kind of do that was the famous Spider-Man Gwen Stacy scene.
Yes.
Where Gwen Stacy was accidentally killed with Spider-Man trying to save her. And it's like he saved her from falling, but she still died because of the process.
And I mean, I obviously would have no idea what to do in that scenario. It's obviously a very gigantic scenario, but that would really mess someone up. And it did for Spider-Man, didn't it?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it had long-lasting effects on the whole book, the character, everything. They've gone back to that well many times, but it's also a really good way of showing how having superpowers doesn't mean you can just save everybody. Like, you're still limited to this world. You're still limited to the effects of the world. And, Johnny Bates can pick up a baby and just chuck him into the atmosphere. And Miracleman can fly fast enough to catch the baby and prevent the baby from, like, crashing into the earth and dying from impact. But he cannot prevent the baby from just dying just from the act of being thrown.
Right. And he didn't die. He just in this specific instance, yes.
Yeah.
Another thing that I forgot to mention, I also loved that Kid Miracleman called him the Big Blue Banana.
Yes, that was, of course, an homage to Captain Marvel was always called the Big Red Cheese. So, yeah. Yeah.
That's so brilliant.
Dr. Sivana would call Captain Marvel the Big Red Cheese.
God, he's so smart. He couldn't come up with something better than that?
Well, yeah. So So when they came up with Marvel Man, they just called him the Blue Banana, the Big Blue Banana.
And that just rolls off the tongue so smooth.
Well, it's more alliterative, so it's better.
So as this scene continues after the child breaks the ribs, I absolutely adored the imagery of them in the clouds doing the flat, gritty colors with the electricity surrounding Kid Miracleman, and how Miracleman was just this like silhouette inside the clouds and everything. Just another little nice nod to how talented this artist truly is.
Yeah.
Enough about him. Well, no, it's gonna come back. I'm sure it is.
He is.
I absolutely just. This was another end of the chapter that kind of got me chilled, and I'm just on the edge of my seat, wanting to know what happens next. The beginning of chapter 6, with Kid Miracleman plopping down in front of Mike's wife's car, and her just running headfirst into him. It makes you go like, "Oh my God, did he lose?"
Right.
And it's just you're thinking, "There's no way. They've been building him up to be so invincible this whole time." And, how could this happen? And the image of him just staring down at the car as she's running into him, so bone-chillingly creepy. He's got these blood-red eyes, and it's just, just gets me all... Ugh.
Yeah, I really like Gary Leach's art. He draws just a creepy-looking bad guy.
That's right. And I'll take this out. I'm just trying to remember where I'm going with this.
Right.
It's also worth noting too. I really loved how they made Miracleman seem powerless against Kid Miracleman. Like they made him just getting the snot kicked out of him, and it comes back into play later in this book how he's still going. Like, he got the absolute snot kicked out of him, and he still comes back because he's got this like fire burning in him to defeat this guy. Like, he wants to keep his wife safe, obviously, but he also does not want Kid Miracleman to be going on like this, because like you were saying, he's villainous, he's psychotic, he's unstable. I think ultimately he's unstable. And the scene continuing after the car crash with his wife, how Miracleman is just like this ragged, gross mess of a person after that fight, and he still comes back in with, like 100%, basically. Like, he's not at 100%, but spiritually he's at 100%.
Right.
I love the quotes that it used during these two's fight, again, with these flat colors. They are titans, and we will never understand the alien inferno that blazes in the furnace of their souls, and we will never grasp their hopes, their despair, never comprehend the blistering rage that informs each devastating blow. I love that because throughout this story, and I guess for example, with Alan Moore's other work, he tries to make the superheroes, I wouldn't say relatable, but believable.
Yeah, believable.
He makes them believable, that you like this could be a guy that you could have a beer with, kind of thing. And in these 3 panels alone, he makes them so unbelievably unrelatable, and it's weird seeing that because I'm not used to that in an Alan Moore book, but it also puts them further up on the pedestal that I was saying earlier. Like, it just makes them seem like these guys are truly gods among men.
Yeah, and that's really it. For Miracleman, Alan Moore is writing the characters of Miracleman and Kid Miracleman and Young Miracleman. They are more than human. They are literally gods among men. I mean, that's the whole Nietzsche quote, the Übermensch, the Superman. They're no longer human beings, and that's how he presents it. And so when you have Miracleman and Kid Miracleman, their big superhero supervillain fight, it's a big scary fight. Like, there's collateral damage all over the place. Like, they're tearing up the city. People are getting caught in the crossfire. It's not presented.
What's nice is that it shows that instead of just like that the city gets destroyed and people just go, okay,
yeah,
it happened. Sorry,
it's not presented as like some kind of like fun adventure where everybody's happy that at least the bad guy's being stopped. Like, no, it's serious.
People are really going to be affected by this.
Exactly,
and I like that because it just adds another, I guess, character. In theory, it adds the normal people as a character that have they're like I was saying, they're going to be affected by this.
Yeah, the whole story is written with like this weight, the whole reality of the situation. You really feel it.
Yeah, like you feel the damage being done right here. So, I thought this was hilarious that he was so Kid Miracleman was so engulfed by his rage to destroy Miracleman. He tricks himself into turning back.
Well, and that was the perfect obvious way that
he was defeated
he
by he was defeated by his own ego,
his own hubris.
Yeah, that was the word I was thinking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well,
God,
and I mean
that's such
a classic Captain Marvelism, even because like in the old Captain Marvel comics, like every time Billy Baston turns into Captain Marvel, and then they have to have a cliffhanger for the next issue. Somebody tricks Billy into saying, or they trick Captain Marvel into saying, the magic word Shazam, and then he says Shazam, and he turns into Billy Bastion, and they put a gag in his mouth so he can't say it again. And it's
right.
They do that a million times. It's
because they know that when he transforms, he's going to be unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the only way to stop him, because when you're presenting the character as an unbeatable, superhero, the only way to stop him is to turn him into his alter ego. And Alan Moore follows through with that, where these are gods among men, and the only way to actually stop him is to change him into a human being. That's the only way a god can defeat another. You can't defeat another god. A god can only defeat a human being.
It's just going to be a stalemate.
Exactly.
And I love that. I love how much the artist truly depicted the human form of Kid Miracleman to be, like, pathetic.
Yes.
Like, these couple panels, like, he looks truly just like
a sniveling little wiener kid.
That's right. And it almost makes you feel bad for him, because the story establishes that Miracleman and Mike Moran are two different people. Same token with this, who knows what the deal is with this. And it's funny too that we were saying this book set so many precedents, that Black Adam in the current Shazam comics did this exact plot point, that Shazam, I want to say it was either in Brave and the Bold or Justice League Unlimited, that
the cartoons.
Yes, in the cartoon depictions, they trick Black Adam into transforming again, and because he's been in the form for so long, he just turns into dust.
He turns to dust. Yeah, that's in the original. I think that's even in the original Captain Marvel Black Adam's comic.
Okay, because I didn't know how long Black Adam has been a character in the Captain Marvel comics.
Black Adam was one of the last characters introduced into the original Captain Marvel run before it was eventually canceled. I think he only made one appearance, but he was eventually brought back when DC revived it, and he became a kind of a regular villain. But that is how he was defeated, was when he said his magic word, he turned back into his human form, which was like 5,000 years old, so he just turned to dust.
Yep, that's exactly, yep. And I love how it says he's like burnt out, because he's been in his form for so long. He's been in it for 18 years.
Yeah.
And he tried to, he said Miracleman, and he didn't transform back. Like, they threw us such a red herring, and it's unbelievable how much I loved it and how I wasn't mad about it. Because I wanted to see this guy go down so bad, and I knew that Miracleman wasn't going to be able to do it originally, because he's, the other guy, Kid Miracleman, has 20 years on him. And it's just, I don't even feel betrayed by it. I just feel like, oh my God, I want to know what's happening.
This is another example of Alan Moore's story setting a precedent that has been used multiple times throughout the comic book industry. In Mark Waid and Alex Ross's Kingdom Come, which I'm sure a lot more people have read Kingdom Come than they have Miracleman. That was the famous ending between the fight between Superman and Captain Marvel. Was that in Kingdom Come? I don't want to spoil the ending, but it's basically this Miracleman ending. That Captain Marvel, they do the twist is that Billy Bastion never grew up. He just stayed Captain Marvel forever. And then when he turned back into Billy Bastion, he was just a little kid. And obviously he was no match for Superman. Or something to that effect. I have to confess, I haven't read Kingdom Come in quite a long time. But whatever it was that they did, it was obviously drawing from this Miracleman ending, which itself was drawing from a lot of the classic Captain Marvel stuff. So it's all kind of like, you can see it's being used and reused and repackaged and reused throughout comic book history. But this is a perfect example of Alan Moore deconstructing the comic book genre, where you have the villain Johnny Bates, Kid Miracleman.
He introduced very early.
Yeah, exactly. He defeats himself. He starts monologuing. He literally starts narrating to himself like a classic supervillain. Like he starts becoming a comic book supervillain, where he's narrating exactly what's happening. At last, I'm finally going to beat Miracleman. And then he realizes that
he's like, oh no,
that's the magic word that turns,
because he hasn't said it in 20 years.
Exactly.
You know, there's been no repercussions behind it. And in other things, it's always the hero breaks out and saves the day while he's monologuing, which I still think is funny when they do it in the right context.
Yeah.
But this is great. It's very organic because he's defeated, like we were saying, by his own hubris. Another thing that it's worth noting too, that I thought was a very, very nice addition, I guess, is whenever Kid Miracleman is about to crush Liz, right before Miracleman comes back onto the scene, he says, "I find it quite a relief now that everybody knows what I am. You have no idea how degrading I found it, pretending to be human." I thought that was just very chilling, you know, that further enhancing the fact that he's this psychopath.
Well, and he finally feels like he can just like let himself go, you know,
which
as a villain. Like he's just happy to reveal his true self.
He's happy to be able to finally just let loose. Like I feel like it's kind of the Superman Doomsday thing. Like he's finally able to just let loose and kick the snot out of Miracleman and just kill people. Who's going to stop him?
Yeah,
after Miracleman's down, no one's going to stop him.
Right.
And then further on that panel, he says, "I'm going to do it, you see, where all of them failed, like that pathetic German clown. A stunted, syphilitic... This is terrible. A stunted, syphilitic, proclaiming the doctrine of the Superman. The Superman. Yeah. Poor Adolf. He had no idea. The real era of the Overman starts here, Mrs. Moran. How bad that you won't live to see it." Whew. Yep. So chilling. I love that so much.
He's going to succeed where the Nazis failed.
Whoa. What a powerhouse.
Yeah.
So I thought Chapter 6 was particularly strong in this book as well, of showing the rise and inevitable fall of Kid Miracleman. And like I was saying, I love that they introduce him so early just to get us to like love to hate him. Like we want to see this guy go down so bad, but he's insane. Like we want to see him kind of go nuts a little bit. And then Alan Moore, you know, makes him turn back into human, and it's just like, oh, I like that much better. It's like I had these classic conventions in my head of like what I believed was going to happen, and it wasn't what happened at all.
Yeah.
And that was great. Refreshing. I thought it was hilarious that when they go out to the field in Chapter 7 to test out what powers he has, which is another nice note that I like, that they don't know the extent of his powers. Like, they don't just magically know, okay, you've got flight, super speed, blah, 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 blah. They actually have to, like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Just a very little subtle thing that I very thoroughly enjoyed. I laughed so unbelievably hard when she pulled comics out of the trunk.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't handle it. And then, after they are done testing the powers in the field, how she drops the bombshell of the baby. Ooh, buddy. That was intense. That had me I just didn't know how to react to it. Like, the baby is Miracleman's.
I really like the way they did that. How, like, Mike, again, going with the whole, like, Mike and Miracleman are two people in one person, and how Mike feels like his wife is cheating on him with Miracleman, even though it's him, but it's not him.
Right, and
so,
I loved how inferior it made him feel.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it
made it believable. It's just like,
right,
let's say you're going after a woman or are with a woman, and someone just comes along that is miles better than you.
How can you compete with Superman?
Right, like, exactly. How can you compete with Superman? And even though they're the same person, they're not at the same time. I also forgot to mention this when they introduced him. I love Cream.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember his full name. He's got that villain smile. Like, even aside from the sapphire teeth,
yeah.
He's got that villain smirk.
Well, I really like Kareem. He's a really good villain. He's like a cool James Bond kind of a villain, which kind of becomes that...
I'd play a James Bond-like character.
Yeah, like, well, because he's, like, basically a real person, but just with one, like, weird little...
redeeming feature.
Well, not a redeeming feature, but, like, a noticeable quirk. In this case, he's got sapphire teeth, you know, like... Yeah,
That's unmistakable.
James Bond villains were like that. You know, obviously Jaws had the metal teeth. You know, Dr. No has the prosthetic hands. Things like that. So he's a really cool, like, again, like a cool real world, quote unquote, super spy kind of a villain. Like, he's a tough guy. He's really, he's a really good villain because he's really, like, charismatic.
Yeah, like, he's got weight behind his words.
Yeah, and that's what makes him so scary. Because he's like a real bold character. Like, he's ballsy.
He really is. Like, he feels like, I don't want to say Lex Luthor-ish, but I'm using it as just kind of a blanket term. Like, he's very confident in what he knows he can accomplish. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what makes him so scary, because he knows he's not invincible. But he's smart enough to be able to...
His connections are invincible, essentially.
Exactly.
His connections are unstoppable, let's put it that way. Not necessarily invincible, but unstoppable. So it gets into the interrogation.
Well, yeah, when he... I really like the way he's able to defeat Miracleman. He does it so perfectly.
Mentally.
Well, yeah, exactly. He plays the mental game. He gets into an elevator with Miracleman and a woman and a baby... I'm sorry, not Miracleman, Mike Moran. That's important.
Correct.
And Mike holds the baby, and Cream just puts a gun in Mike's back because he knows he's Miracleman, and he says, "There's no way you can change into Miracleman without killing that baby in the process, and I know you're not going to do that."
I loved how that came back. You know,
yeah.
Shortly after Cream interrogated the guy who got the injuries from the first time Mike transformed.
Yes.
When he communicated with him on the paper.
Yes.
I loved how that came back as a thing. Like, that is still a thing, that he can't just transform willy-nilly.
Yeah.
I could have used a better word than willy-nilly. But he can't just transform haphazardly. There we go.
Haphazardly. That's a bit more literate of a phrase.
Yeah. I'm busting out the big words now.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah, there you go. I just love that came back as a legitimate thing still. That it wasn't just like they did it once, everyone was like, oh, okay, this guy got messed up by it, whatever.
Yeah.
It's still got weight. Like, it's still got repercussions.
Yeah, he's got superpowers, but they're still confined to reality. He can't just change into Miracleman without affecting the world around him. And that's pretty important when he's holding a baby.
Exactly. Like, further showing that, like, he really is trying to be heroic. Like, this is a lot of information for him to absorb all at once, but he's still trying to make the best of it. He's still trying to be heroic about it, and I like that, because he did get just thrusted into it. You know, he just remembered the word, transformed, and all of a sudden he's a god.
Yep.
And it's great seeing him actually have to adjust to this. And then at the end of the interrogation, you remember how I promised I would not to kill you? Yeah. I was lying, Steve. That was so... Oh, that was so chilling.
I can't help... Even though this... you know what? I'd have to check the exact dates on this. I can't help but read that in Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice from the movie Commando that Arnold did. That's like one of my favorite lines. Early, at one point in the movie, Arnold says to the character, "I like you, Sully. I'm going to kill you last." And then later on in the movie, he's like, "Remember how I said I was going to kill you last? I lied." And then he kills him.
What year was this book?
This was in issue 2, I think. Still.
Yes.
We're still in issue 2. So that had to have been maybe 82 or 83, somewhere in there. I think Commando
was 85.
85.
Yes.
So it probably beat Commando. But
I mean, that's such a oddly specific joke that I feel like one of them influenced one another.
Oh, no. I mean, that's a pretty obvious joke. I mean, like any... that's the kind of perfect joke that I think a million people come up with independently.
It is really like so subtly perfect.
Yeah,
because it's just like, remember how I said I was going to do that?
He's a bad guy.
I was lying.
Yeah, bad guys lie.
I liked right after the end of chapter 7 here how he is kind of experimenting with his powers. Mm-hmm. How he's just kind of showing the viewer that I can't think of the right word for this. I love the imagery here. The hurricane is my mistress. I slide my body across her Arctic vectors and sigh, and her sigh is an ecstasy of birds. Like, it feels very like tokenish, descriptive, like very overly descriptive, painting this image in your head. And then I believe this is where it reveals that he doesn't want to be Miracleman anymore. This is, I think it's, this chapter 8 starts getting into the, he doesn't want to be Miracleman anymore. He feels inferior behind Miracleman, which I love.
Yeah, he starts getting jealous of...
Well, right, and it's like, I think even Liz says, aren't you the same person? Yeah. Essentially, and they're not. Exactly. And that's what I love so much about that, is like Billy Batson and Shazam still feel like the same person, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. These two really, really, really don't. They feel like two completely separate people. And he says, "I'm Michael Moran. I'm 42-year-old man. I'm standing on a rooftop and I feel stupid. All my life I felt stupid." And it's like, God, he's really feeling this.
Yeah.
And it's you feel bad for him, because his wife just dropped the bombshell that they finally are having a kid on the way, but it's not his.
Yeah.
Like, how... This is exactly how I would expect him to react to this. That sucks.
Well, and that's an interesting thing. That's a plot point that keeps going in the later books and the later issues. But I do really like that kind of angle that Alan Moore does, where Mike Moran becomes a god. He becomes a superhero. And basically, in effect, it ruins his life. He's not allowed to have a normal life anymore. And that's one of the things that's going to keep happening in the story, is the more he is Miracleman, the more unpleasant everything becomes for Mike.
Right, and it's like we've been saying, it makes him feel inferior. Mm-hmm. And
because he is inferior.
He truly is. And there's I think what's the harshest reality about that is, on top of him feeling inferior, he knows there's nothing he can do about it.
Right, yeah.
Because you can't just be better than Superman all of a sudden. And it's such a heartbreaking thing that I couldn't give you a baby, but one night with him, and you already got a baby from this guy in one night, and I had been able to give you one for years. He's just so much better at everything than Mike. Yeah. And it's, God, I feel so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
And then it gets into the elevator scene with him being with Cream and him. It's such a nice parallel too, that he just had this gigantic fight with Liz, and it shows that like he's so good around this baby in the elevator.
Yeah,
it's just like, damn man, like you really deserve a kid. It's such a bummer that this is happening the way it is.
Yeah,
I thought that was a nice little touch.
Mike Moran cannot win.
He really can't. And I love the fading panels at the end of the book. He thinks I'm a superhero. He thinks nothing can hurt me. He thinks what a stupid way to die.
Yeah.
And then finally, why sapphire teeth? That was such like a nice little like, what is this guy's deal? Like it kickstarts your brain and it makes you go like, wait, what?
Yeah,
he does have sapphire teeth. What the hell?
What's going on there?
It's worth noting too, because I'm kind of confused about it. At these last panels on page on the end of book 2, when Cream is staring at Mike passing out in the elevator, there's a woman next to him with what looks like skull face paint on. I don't know if that has any relevance or whatnot.
I don't remember.
Yeah, pop open book 2 if you've got it handy. Because, like, I don't know.
I actually don't have it handy.
Okay, well, then no big deal.
Yeah.
It's just, I guess it's just, I don't know. It just looks like she has skull face paint on, and I don't recall her being in the elevator with them. Maybe I think it's the child's mom. But it's just, it's oddly specific that her face looks like a skull as he's passing out. So that was book 2. Let me open book 3. This was the one. This book. This issue, I'm sorry, was, I thought it was good. There was a lot of confusion on my end on this book.
Yeah, this issue is, it's almost kind of, I mean,
I want to say like cryptic.
Well, it's a plot-heavy issue. It's kind of a weird way to end book 1, because, like, you had all the
build-up.
Well, you had the huge clash between Miracleman and Kid Miracleman in
very early.
Yeah, in issue 2.
Yeah,
like the middle of the book. That's where you have this big climax, and then I think it works because that's what makes it so like this. That's what makes this feel so heavy. Is you have Miracleman literally duking it out with another superhero, and they just have this huge, gigantic fight, and then.
That's still not even the end of it.
And it's not even the end of it. And then Miracleman gets beaten by just a normal guy who tricks him into going
outwits him.
Yeah, outwits him, exactly. And then we start getting into the plot of what's his origin, what is going on here? Why does a superhero exist in the real world? And how could that even happen? And that's kind of what issue 3 sets the ball in motion. But it really doesn't answer that many questions.
I feel like it further establishes that Mike Moran really can't win anything.
Yeah.
He cannot and will not win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because issue 3, first of all, it should be noted that issue 3 is drawn by Alan Davis, who's done a couple of other comics with Alan Moore. I know he did Captain Britain with him. That's the only one off the top of my head I can remember. But Alan Davis is obviously a pretty famous... I gotta stop saying obviously all the time. Alan Davis is a pretty famous...
not everyone knows it.
Not everyone knows that. He's a pretty a legendary comic book artist, really. He's had a long run on the X-Men.
It's worth noting that I did not know that the artist switched, and I definitely could not tell.
Yeah.
He mimicked the style very well.
He did. Alan Davis...
I feel like Miracleman looked drastically different in this first page of him walking through the forest, and then the ninjas are trying to fight him, and they can't do anything. I feel like he looked much skinnier than Miracleman in the past 2 issues. But I feel like the rest of it looks spot on to what has been being established throughout these past 2 issues. This issue, like you were saying, is very plot-heavy, and... I understood the plot that was happening, but I didn't understand the big picture.
Well, this issue sets up the true villains, I guess you could say, for Miracleman, which is Project Zarathustra. Again, tying it into Nietzsche, which is something that Alan Moore really likes to do.
Right.
But I mean, it works so well because the whole Superman angle. Project Zarathustra, where they're trying to create a Superman. And Project Zarathustra is a government organization. I don't think I just read this issue the other week. I'm pretty sure they don't really get into like where they get this technology and
not
at all.
It's all just kind of anonymous. Like,
that will come later on. But
okay, because they kind of had it.
Yeah, exactly. This issue they just kind of set up like, oh, there's a secret government organization. They've they were doing these tests on these kids and turned them into the superheroes, basically. And that's what Miracleman finds out. I like Cream as a character. He is a great character. And
it's worth noting also that I really liked Cream revealing that he captured him not to kill him, but tried to get his help.
Exactly, yeah. Because if
I
he
really
like
that.
He would have killed him.
It shows that he's truly villainous for his, I want to say his own gain.
Exactly. He's such a villain that he turns on the bad guys that are hiring him.
Which is so scummy.
He's in
it to win it.
One.
Yeah, he's in it to win it.
He's in it to win it, exactly. So I like how he basically gives Miracleman all of his information, and that scene is really good too, where he's explaining everything to Miracleman, and he's like, "I need you to trust me. So in order to do that, I'm going to take the tape off of your mouth, so that you understand that I'm completely putting my life in your hands. I'm on your side." And Mike turns into Miracleman, and he looks at him, and he's like, "Okay, you have my trust for now." That's a good scene, because that's, again, Cream. He is a ballsy son of a bitch. Like,
I thought it was also worth noting, I don't know if this was just a hiccup, that Cream and the general area around him were unharmed when he transformed.
Probably just a
very, very tiny oversight that I'm being OCD about. But I didn't know.
Well, especially because of a big deal they made about it all the other times. Cream was wearing sunglasses, I think.
Yes, he was. That's
correct.
Wearing
sunglasses. It was okay.
I really, 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 really loved the artist's interpretation of Miracleman. This current artist.
Yeah,
this was where I knew something was a little different. How much more like defined he was in these next couple panels of him, like dozens and dozens of like him glowing and sparkling and stuff.
Yeah,
just it really made him seem really marvelous.
Right.
I can't believe it.
Miraculous.
Yeah, I was gonna say miraculous, but I went, nah, I'm just gonna say marvelous. I liked too them showing the sporadic panels of the guys in the suits that are just black silhouettes. Mm-hmm. I loved how they made them just black silhouettes to keep them kind of anonymous, just to give the reader an idea that there is a bigger picture going on here. Mm-hmm. Just keep it in mind, don't forget it.
I really like the way that the bad guys behind Project Zarathustra, they referred to Miracleman and Kid Miracleman as just monsters.
Yes.
They didn't even they had no illusions about whether or not they were heroes or humans. They're monsters. They know exactly
right. They had something in their head that these things were going to be, and that's it. Like, I like that as much as I don't want to like that, just because I'm on Miracleman's side. I want to see him succeed.
Right.
I want to, and these guys are the bad guys.
But Miracleman's not human, so
exactly.
I think by definition you could say he's a monster.
Exactly. They don't understand it,
yeah.
So they're just going to pass it off as a monster. And like you were saying, he's not human, so
yeah,
he could be classified as a monster, regardless if that has positive or negative connotation.
Mm-hmm. So basically, this issue is. Cream gives Miracleman the information he has about the existence of Project Zarathustra, and that's where Miracleman came from. So Miracleman goes directly to the location and just walks in, and that's also kind of a nice callback, homage, even a deconstruction, if you will, of the superhero genre, specifically the old Captain Marvel styles of him just standing there while people try to kill him and they're just unable to do it, and he just ignores them. That's what's going on here with Miracleman, just steadily and determined walking into Project Zarathustra. And they've got all their defenses going off like crazy, but none of them can actually do anything against him.
Which I of course I like, because like it keeps just reinforcing that, like, if it's not going to be another one of him, nothing's taking him down as Miracleman. Like, Cream took him down as Mike Moran. He outsmarted him, he outwitted him, but if he's Miracleman, he's unstoppable.
Right. He's a god. He's a god among men.
And now that he knows that the information behind his origin is in this bunker, like he's in the zone. Like he is determined. He's going to see it through. And it just, you can see like the artist kind of made, when he's Miracleman, his eyes seem kind of like dead.
Yeah.
Like they seem very
just emotionless.
Yeah, which is weird. Like I guess in my mind, if I was Miracleman, I'd be pumped all the time. It'd be awesome. So I liked that.
So what did you think of? So Miracleman gets into Project Zarathustra and he gets the information. What did you think of this revelation of the origin?
Oh wow, that threw me for a loop. Again.
Okay, what was the origin? The big.
If I believe the revelation was he was artificially created by this project, and that all of these dreams of him being Miracleman were implanted, correct? And that it essentially resulted in like everything kind of amounted to nothing in theory, like because it wasn't real.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're forgetting the other big revelation was that the head of Project Zarathustra was Dr. Gargunza, who is the main villain of Miracleman.
Okay.
So,
was that like of any importance prior to his reveal? Like what? Would I have known
in the very chapter 1? They mentioned Dr. Gargunza as in passing. I forget specifically where, but they mentioned Dr. Gargunza being like their recurring villain. And Dr. Gargunza obviously is supposed to be Dr. Savannah from Captain Marvel.
Yes, the parallel to that.
So the reveal is that Dr. Gargunza is not just a fictional fantasy memory like all of his other adventures. Dr. Gargunza
He's a real thing.
He's a real thing. And he was the one who was in charge of Project Zarathustra. And he was the one who implanted all of these superhero memories into young Mike Moran as a kid.
So it's worth noting that he intentionally implanted himself in these memories, not just a made-up, fictionalized version of himself.
Well, actually, I'm going to say that you're wrong there, but
Ouch.
You won't realize it until you read more issues, because I don't think they address that in issue 3.
Okay.
But there is a specific reason why Gargunza is a villain in his fantasy memories, but I don't believe they got into it in issue 3.
Okay, so spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah, exactly. Because basically, he reveals, like, Gargunza reveals himself. Miracleman is reviewing this data, of Project Zarathustra, and Gargunza is basically just narrating the project of what they're doing. And again, this is a deconstruction of the superhero genre. The kids are all orphans, just like practically all superheroes.
Most of them, yeah.
Definitely all of the 40s and 50s heroes. They were practically all orphans. And it does this nice little thing where what I liked was this is where you see the clashing and the merging of reality with fiction, where Alan Moore basically, in this story, he basically says superheroes cannot exist in the real world, and the only way that we have a superhero in the real world in our comic book is that he's literally a comic book character. These kids were brainwashed into thinking that they were comic book characters, and that's the only way they could
cope with the idea,
and understand having these powers, because they couldn't understand having it in reality. And so that's kind of the big reveal, which it sounds kind of, like I said, this is kind of a Citizen Kane thing, where now it's almost passé now.
Tacky now.
Yeah, but it was a pretty big deal back when.
Well, I mean, if people are going to continue doing it, it had to have been a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's worth noting that I found Big Ben absolutely hysterical.
Oh yes, I totally forgot about Big
The
Ben.
second they revealed him, I saw his design and died. I laughed so hard, and like I felt like he was the depiction of what most people drew superheroes as, these big barrel-chested gorillas.
He had muscles bulging all
upon
over him.
muscles.
I loved he was wearing a tuxedo spandex costume,
Which is atrocious.
it like looked really awkward.
Yes.
But it was supposed to, and that's what made it so perfect.
They introduce him, and it feels like one of those classic Miracleman villains, like the real cheesy, like out of context. You would look at this and go, "What is this?"
Yeah, in the real world, it looks stupid as hell.
Yeah, he's wearing a tuxedo spandex like onesie.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's hilarious.
Right.
And as he's talking to Miracleman, he's saying, he's a villain of the Kremlin,
Bolshevik blighter.
right? And like all of these really oddly specific, it's so.
Big Ben has been brainwashed into fighting the communist Russia.
Which is nice that they don't reveal that straight out of the gate.
Right.
You just think that it's this cheesy
weirdo.
And it's like, okay, he's super strong, I guess.
Yeah.
And I love how carelessly Miracleman is just backing off his advances.
Yeah, Big Ben is like he's like a super strong superhero, and he's still nothing to Miracleman.
He's still literally just not even Miracleman is barely even like registering that there's someone in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved all the British, God, I can't think of the word again. All of the
slang.
Like all of the British slang and all of the mannerisms.
Yeah.
I loved that. I thought it was hilarious. Like I kept saying, his design is so goofy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I love how this panel. I love this panel so specifically. I wish I knew who he was. I wish he'd stop hitting me.
Yeah.
I laughed so hard at that because you can see his face in the debris of the boulder hitting him.
Yeah.
He looks so bored. He just wants him to go away so bad.
There's bigger things going on. Just let me deal with those.
And then he says, Big Ben says after much dismay that none of this is working. He says, "Surrender, Butcher of Leningrad. Surrender or fight like a man. Damn your eyes." And then Miracleman says, "All right." Smacks him.
Slaps him.
He's gone. He is nowhere to be found. He is destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Cream says, "White man's magic."
Yeah, that was good. Yeah,
I loved in that panel, too, when he says white man's magic, you get a little flash of Big Ben's cufflink that has a B on it. Like, it's so goofy. But anyways, I love that character. I love what they end up doing with him late at the end of this book.
Mm-hmm.
How they reveal that he is psychologically unstable, that he sees everything as these gigantic fantasies, that he is just broken.
Merging reality and fiction. And Big Ben is a character where they did all the same stuff that they did to Captain Marvel, but it didn't work. It turned him into this broken
mess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas with Captain Marvel, he's a perfect being.
It worked. The project worked.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that was a good foray into the failed experiment trope.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And I didn't know how often this happened before this book, but I feel like this was a very successful way to introduce it into this book specifically. Mm-hmm. And I love how Miracleman is he can't understand this. He says, "This happened in 1950s. Like, we didn't even have polio vaccines then. How is this possible?" And I love how Big Ben walks in and hears this and hears that, like, that all of these experiments happened and that these were all planned from the get-go. I also loved the last page of having the parallels between what Big Ben sees and what's actually happening.
Yeah, that was good too.
I thought that was an incredibly good touch.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that's Miracleman.
And that's
that was the last
end
book.
Of book one.
Yes,
it's a real. I kind of agree with you. It's almost a real frustrating ending to a book because but at the same time you got to remember it's not an ending. This is just getting started.
Right.
I mean, this is 3 issues out of a 15 issue run.
And I mean, it's a lot of information they have to give us.
It's a really great start because let me tell you, as somebody who has read the whole thing, it just keeps building and building and building, and it just keeps getting better and better and better.
Because it started off strong, like
exactly,
with them introducing Kid Miracleman so early on as a quote unquote villain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happens. I don't know what continues to happen in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he comes back, but
he stays a character. Yes.
Okay, that's what's important. Okay.
I mean, anybody who's read the book right now is probably laughing because they're like, "Oh my god!" Like, but yeah, trust me, Johnny Bates stays around.
Okay, good, because it's in the back of my head too. I'm like, I wonder if he stays around, and then in the back of my head, I wonder what happened to young Miracle, the third child.
Now I will say the third one, Young Miracleman, that's probably the only thing about Alan Moore's run. He really doesn't get into that at all, and that is something. I mean, it gets brought up, but it really doesn't get explored until Neil Gaiman's run.
Oh, okay.
But so like it's there in Alan Moore's run, but he doesn't do a lot with it.
I also thought it was worth noting too, the little boxes of text throughout Miracleman's revelation, that the discovery of who he is, how it was saying the various timestamps, and it was at 5:56 that the video machine malfunctioned and jammed, and it was like those little hints that like Miracleman went absolutely ballistic when he found this out.
Yes,
I thought that was really nice because it's still showing that like this really messed him up, like finding this out. This was
finding out that your whole life is a lie.
That's pretty mind numbing.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's this book was really stinking good.
So yeah, that's Miracleman book 1. Excellent comic. I definitely think everybody, if you're interested in like the history of superheroes
and Shazam-esque characters of normal schlub transforming into a superhero.
It's definitely a must read.
Yes.
We are going to read more Miracleman in the future, but we're not going to do the next Miracleman book for our next episode. The next episode of Comic DNA is going to be, what did we say it was going to be?
iZombie.
iZombie, that's right. iZombie.
That is a personal favorite of mine.
Yes. iZombie, written by Chris Robertson and drawn by Mike Allred. Pretty new comic, although it is no longer being published at this point.
It's picking up a lot of steam now because the CW signed off on a pilot for iZombie.
That's right. They did. So there's a little TV buzz going on about this book. But
the CW has an enormous amount of buzz behind it from Arrow.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Everyone already has them on their radar, more or less.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good because it's a good comic.
I feel like it's not getting into it too far, but it's such a great untraditional spin on zombies.
Well, we will have plenty of time to talk about it.
Yes, we will.
In our next episode. So once again, thanks to everybody who's listening. I am Aaron, and this is what's your name again?
Oh my God, what is my name? Luke.
Luke. You can find more of my comics that I write and draw at newhavencomics.com, and you can find more of what do you do again, Luke?
I do things. You can find more on me at my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Levant, LEAVANT. It's mostly video game stuff, but I record some things important every now and again.
And we will be uploading new episodes of the podcast at newhavencomics.com and
the Inevitable YouTube channel.
And probably some other websites whenever we get around to doing it. So
It'll
thanks
get there.
Again for listening, and we'll see you next time.